All right.
Well, hello. Yeah, welcome to the first bi-weekly update from for Double GDP. We're excited to be sharing this, and I'm excited to get my first error out of the way. So that's a very good thing. So for those of you who are new to watching this video, which is everybody watching this video, this is our opportunity to share publicly the great progress that we are making and engage the community and invite comments and questions. So with that, Jay, do you want to add a word and we can dive in?
Yeah, I think I'm ready to go.
Great. So we wanted to give updates in I guess 5 key areas. We want to talk a little bit about product, some of the relationships we've developed, the customers and our thinking on that, recruiting, and then some just sort of administrative business building kinds of updates. So Jay, do you want to run and give a quick headline on product? Oh, and just for the agenda, we're going to just give some quick updates across all of these and then talk mostly about product because we're really excited about what we've learned in the last 2 weeks in that regard.
Yeah, that sounds good. So let's start with product. Sid, I think the most important thing to know on the product side is that we had our first 2 kind of like customer discovery calls with the Ninkwashi administrative team. So really the point of those things was to begin digging into how the city is operating, how it's moving on, what various different types of software solutions are involved in in the administration of the city right now, and begin talking with them about what ways that our Double GDP software can begin to like start kind of like filling some of the unmet needs that they're encountering. So we had those first couple of calls, which I think we want to share a bunch of color about them in this chat. But really what those things drove for us were capture of the earliest user stories that we might kind of design for, as well as our first kind of sketches of some potential solutions for those things. So like the outcome, right? Like we created the end user stories and the mock-ups based on those needs. And then as the other most important of the pieces of progress, I think on product, were that we did the fastest next revs to the website design. So tweaked, improved, and launched some of the updates to the website.
Great. On key relationships, we also met Mark Lutter, or not in person, but over the phone, and he shared with us his Charter Cities Institute onboarding document, which has had some great reading material. I've been reading Order Without Design, which is a fantastic summary of sort of urban planning and economics and how those 2 things come together. So that's been interesting for me to get sort of versed in that. And then we also found out that Muya and Ninkwashi they're upgrading their ISP shortly, so we should have some better internet connectivity there. And then Jay put together our first promo slideshow, so we're ready to have a video showcased in the Joburg showroom for Ninkwashi. And Jay, do you want to say anything about that video?
Yeah, I think, Sid, as we talked about, everything in terms of telling the story of Double GDP right now is oriented towards like speed and iteration. So the model we ended up landing on was basically like a very fast kind of like couple of hour slideshow based on the pitch deck for Double GDP that we already had. We oriented a little bit more towards like telling the story of what it will be like to live in a city where technology makes everything efficient and transparent, and the ways in which that really kind of helps municipalities become a little more accountable to the needs and wants and expectations of their residents. So I know you did that with Mia this morning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it seemed to work pretty well for him, right?
Yeah, I think that he enjoyed the video and thought it was a good start. We're also thinking about doing a little bit of video snippet so that we have ourselves speaking on camera a little bit. But
a little bit of like a little bit of like voice overview of, hey, here's like here's Muya talking about technology and how it makes a difference for something like Ninkwashi. just to kind of bring that to life. I think the biggest kind of like learning we had here was we were a little unsure of what level of fidelity we wanted this kind of like promo video to be like in the in the showroom in Joburg, and the inclination we had with you, Sid, in the last conversation was like build something really fast and see if that can fit the need. So that kind of like, you know, moves along what they're trying to do with Inkwashi, as well as doesn't distract us from actually building the product. And it turned out that level was totally going to work for this particular situation. So feeling good about that.
Yeah. And then recruiting, we have a couple of engineering leads that we've been talking with. We had some great conversations. We'll catch you up a little bit more offline on some of those. But moving forward there, though, very much still want to build a pipeline for engineering recruiting and find some more people that we can be talking with. I think we now have some great product ideas that we'll share in just a minute, but need some more executional capability to be able to start delivering on them.
Yeah, I think the most important thing was we did bring on a consulting engineer sort of in an advisory role just to sit with us on the first of those user conversations. That was really valuable, both to hear his interpretation of you know, the same types of like things that we were hearing from Inkwashi, and like, you know, I'm translating it through my like experience from the design side, and like it was nice to have that matched up with someone who's like done some like, you know, technology engineering and like infrastructure design to match up with it. Nolan's inclination is also that like these types of kind of like part-time quick hit involvements of the engineering community may be one of our like best recruiting tools for actually building the full-time engineering team. So I tossed out to Nolan, hey, maybe what we should do is like find that community of interested engineers who aren't quite ready to be full-time on our team, and do something like a series of like hackathon days, just to like invite the community to participate in building of what we're creating. And we think that might be one of the ways we get to recruit the right team. Certainly with the kind of consulting engineer that we brought on for those first calls, just involving him in those conversations was probably the first kind of like, you know, rope that we get to pull him onto the team full time.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that also aligns with this idea that everyone can contribute. So I'm really in favor of that. Anything else we wanted to cover on the customers, building the business, anything like that? I feel like we've made a few administrative stuff, but we can go through that offline.
No, I think on the customer side, both Mark Letter and we are very open to making next step introductions to us for to other developers of new communities, and so that network that you've already established is going to be you know, a great partner in helping to grow DoubleGDP outside of Inkwashi as well.
Great. So let's talk about some of what we learned from the Inkwashi team. We met head of finance, we met the head of marketing and communications, the head of site operations, and for me, and the chief of staff as well.
Yeah.
And I think that for me especially, this was like just a real breakthrough moment where we got to understand and sort of feel firsthand both the excitement and the passion that they felt and some of the challenges that they're running into, which I think on the one hand are sort of big and sort of complex, and on the other hand, like very mundane, just dealing with like a database that crashed, and that you know, just dealing with like the hassle of a database going away and having to redo the metadata tagging on 10,000 customers, and stuff that I think that you know, in a mature piece of software we kind of take for granted. Yeah. But so I'd like to just share some of the themes that I got from it, and we can talk about some of the surprises too. I think some of the themes that came through very clearly was just how important targeted communications are. And this is something that the head of marketing talked about, and what a mature organization they already have here. They talked about using a Wix newsletter to send out messages to their audience of several thousand. You know, they have 10,000 people in the database right now that they're trying to keep up to date. And so keeping all of people abreast of what's going on, but in the way that is relevant to them is actually a non-trivial challenge. And they talked about wanting to be able to segment based on which portfolio somebody has been able to bought into, when they actually signed up, a variety of what neighborhood they're going to be living in. So there's all sorts of ways that they want to be able to sort of communicate with people that I think are very sophisticated and sort of look like a modern, look not modern, but look like any other kind of marketing operation that we would expect to see here. But the tools that they have are just sort of not targeted to their kind of use case in this area.
Yeah. One of the things that really came up for me, and it came up in a couple places, but like I feel like one of the stories that it was just most memorable, Nolan, had to do with like what happens when someone who has learned about in the city of Ninkwashi like goes at like leaves the city, like leaves the capital and goes and visits the city, and like the development is in process, right? And it expands over a large amount of land, and so when someone goes and visits it and like isn't quite sure how to interpret the difference between what they've seen on a map and what they're seeing in person, as well as sort of like mapping onto it like project completion stages. And you're like, hey, like, isn't there supposed to be a dam here? And like they ping back and they're like standing at like taking a picture of like where maybe there's supposed to be a dam, and then like tweeting at the administrators of the city like, hey, like these guys are kind of like pulling our chain or whatever, right? Like there's no dam in progress here. And of course, what's interesting is that like, no, the dam is in progress, like just a little bit over the hill. And like, they've just kind of like misinterpreted their visit to this like in process development. And so the connections between like the plan of a development and like what's happening in progress is like at least what I'm learning is it's a really nuanced like thing for a new city developer to be managing with their existing like kind of people who have purchased plots of land and who are beginning to work on it, as well as people who are kind of like trying to decide whether they might want to be residents of this city. And I think kind of helping Nkwashi work through that with some of the design of our tools be a really big deal. And then of course there's this like underlying kind of like emotion that connects to that too, of like how are we communicating trust and reliability in the design of our in the design of our offerings, right? To what degree can some like communication support tool that we design and equip Nkwashi with help them like show the degree to which they are trustworthy to these to these new residents? It just seems like really, really central to the needs of this type of customer.
Yeah, we talked a lot about in our software helping to connect the vision with today's reality,
nice. Yep.
right? Or whatever they're seeing today to connect that with vision. So I think that was powerful. And that I think goes with this with one of the things that their head of marketing also talked about, which is the balancing of safety and openness, right? Being able to say, hey, we have an active construction site. We need to be able to authenticate people, have them come in, know where they're going and things like that. But at the same time, make sure that we are, so we're protective, but also open and promoting transparency and letting people come see the site and get engaged and excited about it. So
right, because it's like the first
that was really,
they have to kind of like communicate one of the critical values of this new community.
Yeah. That actually led to, one of the things that we did, and I think we'll show this in some of our designs, we talked about the way that a resident can interact with the city in our product. And we talked about the notion that, in most cities, the primary way that a resident interacts with that city is through a form, right? You go online and you fill out some sort of form, and then you have to submit that form, and it goes through some variety of process. And one of the ideas that we've been experimenting with is, what if that looked just like a chat? You open a question or a query to your city and say, hey, I want to come and do a tour, or I have a question about my payment. And it just looks like, it feels like interacting with WhatsApp. And and to you, but on the back end, there's a sophisticated issue management system that the city is using to keep track of it. So we have some of that built in as well, where you have this notion of safety and accountability and transparency with the city, but also the openness, and that it feels sort of you can communicate with the city in the way that you're used to communicating with people.
Totally. Yeah, I really like that.
Couple other things, just I think that came out of there. I think, was one of the challenges that they talked about was just managing materials on a daily basis. Just thinking about the amount of fuel or oil that's consumed, partly because they are buying this on a regular basis, and the currency fluctuates so often that they want to make sure that they're stocking for another few days, but also buy when the currency is in their favor to do it. So just thinking about sort of the logistics of this daily operation was, for me at least, a very different mind space than what I normally associate as sort of city services. But then after I did that, just driving around San Francisco, I realized that much of San Francisco actually looks like an active construction site too. So there is, I think there's a lot to do there. So I was actually really excited to mock up some ideas of what we can do around the day-to-day construction management that Nkwashi is dealing with, and sort of how that can roll up too.
Yeah, there's a corollary to what Nolan was just talking about there, Sid, and I think it's that, like, if you asked me 3 weeks ago what are the most like analogous solutions to what we're trying to build, I think I would have told you that they are the solutions that really look like kind of like a digital city hall and are like kind of like really coming out of the GovTech innovation space. And the deeper I get in conversations with community developers and like new city developers, sort of like these guys, the more I realize that there's actually like a very strong analog to the people who are building tools for like new digital and kind of like real estate tools for real estate developers. So we'll share a couple examples of what that looks like from a competitive set, or more like less competitive, because like what we're really talking about is a very different type of customer base, but more analogous solutions perspective next time we chat. Yeah.
Well, great. I think that covers everything we wanted to go through, Jay. Anything else you'd like to add?
Nope. I think that's it.
Great. Well, let's sign off. High five.
There it is.